We got steel helmets, we put up sandbags, and we got a system, an alarm system. And we were effective because Klansmen, they had, the local press had reported that on some occasions as many as 7,500 Klansmen had come through the community, and they were shooting pistols, and they had the Klan motorcades for 2 and 3 miles long. So we started to fight. What happened, the black ministers went before the city and county officials and asked them to please stop those people from terrorizing our community. In one case, they made a black woman dance at pistol point under a street light in our community. And ministers went up and begged them, and the white people told the ministers, said, oh, no, the Klan's people got just as much right to organize as your communist NAACP. So, and then we asked ministers please not to go back to ask them anything. From now on, we would take care of it. Next time they came through, we had a shootout. And so then, after we had a big shootout, then the same officials said they had just as much right as the NAACP to organize, banned the Klan. They couldn't have any more motorcade, and it wasn't because they wanted to grant us security, but it was because they wanted to save the lives of those people.
Now, we have about 2 minutes in our first interview. Can you explain to us how you got to the point where you had to lead a country?
Yeah, well, what happened was that I had been there for 6 years. We had held those people at bay, and the chief of police became so afraid, and he said that Williams is trying to provoke a war. Don't let him provoke you. Now, that was strange, telling the Klan not to let a black man provoke them. But what had happened, I was being criticized all over the country that I was mishandling it, and that I didn't understand the power of nonviolence and love. And so I told them, well, these are savages. If you people can show me, can demonstrate to me that you can change a savage, then I will become a pacifist. So Reverend King sent some of his people in there, and they came in, and as soon as they came in, the whole thing completely disintegrated. And that was the reason that I had to go into exile.
I mean, was there any specific charge that you was under?
Yes. The white couple that had been riding around the week before with a big sign on the side of their car, open season on Coons, talking about black people. They came through there, and a group of about 200 or 300 black people took them out of the car. And if it hadn't been for me, they would have been killed. I kept them from killing them. But they didn't want them. You see, they wanted to get rid of me. So then they had me indicted for kidnapping.
Okay, this is Project Bait. We're speaking with Brother Robert Williams of NAACP, Union County, North Carolina, 1950s. We're discussing the 1950s. We're soon to get into the 1960s, and we're going to find out how Brother Robert Williams appeared on a program with Mao Zedong before 2 million people in China in the 1960s. This is Project Bait. We're continuing our discussion with Brother Robert Williams. The graphic that you saw opening the second interview was Brother Robert Williams with Mao Zedong at a speech delivered to over 2 million people. But before we get into that, we want to deal with Brother Robert Williams. You left the United States 1959, 1960?
61.
Okay, you left. You were under this kidnapping charge. As you spoke in the first interview, we were talking about a white couple that they trumped charges up on you of kidnapping.
Yeah.
Now, when you left the United States, you went underground and you surfaced in Cuba?
Yes. See, I had been to Cuba before the revolution was a year old. That I was invited to Cuba in 1960, and by Fidel Castro, who had invited 18 black Americans, mostly writers and entertainers.
Will we know any of those names? No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just give us a few names of those 18 people who went with you.
Julian Mayfield, and John Henry Clark, and Sarah Wright, and at that time, Baraka, who was Leroy Jones.
Okay, we just you dropped enough on us to let us know it's a serious group. Excuse me, you had been I wanted you to continue.
And Harold Cruz.
Okay, Crisis of the Negro Intellect.
Yes.
Okay, now you had been there, you said the revolution had not been 1 year old and you had went there.
Yes, we went in a group that Fidel had invited us there. And while I was there, I was the only one from the South. And he came to see us and he said, I understand there's somebody here from the South. Where is it? And they all pointed to me. And he had asked everybody what do they want to know about Cuba. And when he got to me, he said, what do you want to know? And I said, I want to know how you won the revolution. And he said, oh, I'll see you later. I'll see you later. So then after that, he offered to me and said I should stay there. He said, oh, the Cuban people like you. You should stay in Cuba. And I told him no, that I had to go back to the south of the United States. But the day may come when I would need to come to Cuba. And he said, well, you'll always have a home in Cuba.
Okay, now this has been over 30 years.
Yeah.
Can you give us any scoop on how you made it? I mean, can you just tell us how did you, in that day and age, the FBI, at the peak of their power, you were able to leave this country, definitely without a passport. And I know you didn't take a commercial flight. You were able to get from here to Cuba. Just give us a little flavor.
I had the best passport in the world. I had flyers the FBI wanted. I was wanted by the FBI, so that was the best passport I could have had to travel in third world countries.
That was a revolutionary passport?
Yes. But what happened, according to the Baltimore Sun, that the Kennedy administration assigned 500 FBI men to my case. In fact, I got it in my Freedom of Information to show where J. Edgar Hoover said he wanted me, and he wanted me on the 10 most wanted list. He said, and I want him bad. But they missed me. And the reason they missed me was because I always kept good contact with people and a good relationship with people. And they were looking for me in Harlem, and they were tearing Harlem apart. But I was on Long Island, living in a white home. So that's one reason they didn't get me. Then I got across into Canada. Canadians helped me. Canadian people even sent a lawyer to travel with me in case they picked me up in Canada. So that's how I was able to get away. But, you know, it's a strange thing. This is why we must pay more attention to education, the education of our children. When I was in the south of the United States, and they would always teach us about the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Teacher would ask us, say, oh, children, you know, what is a Mountie? And what is the motto of the Mountie? And we would say in unison, oh, the Mountie motto is we always get our man. So when I got to Canada now, I never thought the FBI would get me. I didn't think that they would get me, but I thought I could remember from my childhood that the Mounties always get their man. And then I had been in the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps taught that go for broke, never surrender, go for broke. And I said, well, maybe the Mounties have never caught a black man. Every picture I've seen as a child, they were bringing white men back from the North Pole. And I said, well, maybe I could be the first one. And wouldn't it be good if a black man, I could be the first one the Mounties didn't get? So I went for broke. And they didn't catch me. And I got help from Canada by the Cubans. Fidel Castro, when they flashed it all over the world, that I was this desperate, I was schizophrenic, heavily armed and dangerous, extremely dangerous, and all of that news went into Cuba. And Fidel Castro sent word out to every Cuban embassy in the world. If William shows up, give him every bit of the help that he needs. And they were telling Fidel they had a big bet. Said, well, Fidel, he can't make it to our embassy. And Fidel said, well, I've got a lot of confidence in William. I believe he'll show up in one of our embassies. And I did. So I got the help that was necessary.
Okay, you spent 5 years in Cuba.
Yeah.
What was the relationship? What's the Afro-Cuban community like in Cuba?
Well, you see, it depends on what part of Cuba you're in. Now, in Oriente Province, way out in Cuba, it's, you know, primarily black culture. That it looks similar, I suppose, to Africa. And they still practice, you know, certain African religion and African dances and drums, and they've got the culture, black culture. But Havana is somewhat different because of the fact it's a cosmopolitan area where all the foreigners have come. And I can assure you that anywhere you find an American white person going, you're going to find racism sprouting. even to the point that they are working hard to spread it into China.